This episode was created by HESA Association from Romania as part of System Developing Organizational Activity of Professional Developing Activity Vibe training course coordinated by APG and co-founded by European Union. Enjoy!
Right now, there are millions of hours of perfectly edited, highly informative podcasts sitting on servers in complete and utter silence.
Yeah, just absolute crickets. Zero downloads.
Exactly. Zero. And it's not because the content is bad or, the audio is poor. It's because the creators fell for one of the biggest myths in digital media.
Oh, the whole if you build it, they will come thing.
Right. The idea that you just hit publish, refresh the dashboard, and, the screen just stares back at you with a big fat zero.
It is brutal.
It really is. So today, we are dismantling that myth entirely. Welcome to the deep dive. We're going to break down the exact mechanics of how to promote a podcast from absolute zero to a real engaged audience.
And we're tailoring this specifically for you if you are running youth projects, community initiatives, or if you're just a young creator starting without some massive marketing budget.
Right, because you don't need a massive budget. And to prove that, we aren't just giving generic advice today. We are pulling directly from this incredible masterclass of a source.
Yeah, it's the actual communication playbook for a project called VBE.
Which stands for Visionary Interactive Broadcasting for Empowerment. Super cool name.
It is, and it's funded by Erasmus+, which means it's a European mobility project. So essentially, it provides resources for youth workers to travel, collaborate across borders, and, share these communication skills in person.
But the thing that makes Vibe so unique is how they teach. They use podcasting to strengthen communication, and they do it by producing a meta podcast.
Right, a podcast that teaches you how to create a podcast.
It's brilliant. It serves as this real-time, step-by-step tool for youth organizations. So today, we are analyzing the exact promotional word map used by Vibe's European partners, including this one organization in Romania called HESA.
And the tone today is energetic, youth-friendly. Think of it like, two friends just plotting a creative project.
Yeah, we are stripping away all that dense marketing jargon. We want to look at the invisible machinery of audience building and give you practical, immediate steps. So if you're listening and you have a project you want the world to hear, this is your practical blueprint.
Absolutely. And the very first step in that blueprint kind of challenges the instinct most new creators have.
Oh, totally. Because the instinct is usually to keep everything a massive secret until launch day.
Exactly. You want that big reveal.
Yeah.
But you cannot just drop an episode in silence and expect a crowd to magically materialize.
Right. Before you can harvest an audience, you have to, prepare the ground. You have to plant the seeds.
Which is why VIE uses a really strict 4-week communication schedule leading up to their launch. They have a planned horizon for March 2026, and this pre-launch phase is all about establishing a foundation.
So what does that look like practically? 4 weeks out, what are they doing?
They start with what they call a launch teaser. It's just a 15 to 30 second vertical video designed for Instagram Reels and TikTok.
Okay, super short.
Very short. And it answers one incredibly simple question. What is a meta podcast? That's it.
So they pair that short video with a static launch announcement on Facebook and Instagram, right?
Yeah, and a website news post, which builds credibility.
Right. It's literally like planting seeds and watching them grow. You put these little ideas into the algorithm soil before the big tree, the actual podcast even sprouts.
That's a great way to put it.
But okay, let me push back on this for a second. Let's unpack this. If a youth organization in a small town has literally 0 listeners right now, who are they even teasing?
I know, it feels weird.
Yeah, isn't a pre-launch trailer kind of a waste of time if the room is completely empty?
Well, see, that's the trick. You are not just talking to the end user. You are talking to the platform itself.
Oh, the algorithm.
Exactly. You're giving the algorithm data to index. When you post that 15-second reel, the platform's AI starts categorizing your content. It figures out which tags, keywords, and, audience behaviors align with your account.
So that when episode 1 finally drops, the AI already knows who to show it to.
Precisely. It already has a roadmap. But V by E doesn't just stop at social media algorithms. They also publish that website news post, a static blog article.
Which, I mean, seems a bit counterintuitive, right? Writing a text-based blog post to promote an audio medium feels a little old school.
It does, but there's the huge strategic layer there. It creates a searchable, permanent reference.
Oh, for stakeholders.
Yes. The playbook explicitly notes that this early content is about establishing institutional trust. The teaser reel might catch a teenager casually scrolling on TikTok, but that website post is a signal to local stakeholders.
Right, because if a local school principal or, I don't know, a city council member searches for the project, they don't just find an empty page.
Exactly. They find a professional, neutral, fact-based article explaining that this local group is part of an EU partnership. The VIBE strategy document sums it up perfectly. Strategy beats noise, always.
Strategy beats noise. I love that. So by planting those seeds across different mediums, the reel for the algorithm, the static post for the timeline, the website for the search engines, you're warming up the room.
Everyone that something valuable is coming.
But okay, there is a massive trap here. You can plant all the seeds you want, but once the podcast actually launches, the workload shifts.
Oh, it skyrockets.
Yeah. Promoting a 45-minute audio file every single week is the fastest route to creator burnout.
And that burnout usually happens because creators try to force their audience to consume the entire piece of media all at once. Like, here's my hour-long show, please go listen.
Right, which is asking way too much of a stranger on the internet.
Exactly. So VIBE solves this by turning one big thing into many small things. They fragment a single episode into multiple social media posts.
It's honestly like baking a massive cake. You wouldn't just shove an entire cake in someone's face, right?
I mean, I wouldn't recommend it.
No. You hand out bite-sized slices. These short clips and reels are the slices that help the podcast grow faster.
I love the cake analogy. And VIBE's slices are really well designed. For instance, they use a 7-slide carousel on Instagram and Facebook titled 3 Things Podcasting Changes in Youth Work.
Let's actually look at the hidden machinery of that carousel. Social media platforms care about dwell time.
Right? How long you stay on a post?
Right. So every second a user spends swiping through a 7-slide carousel, the algorithm registers that your content is holding human attention. You aren't just giving a quick lesson, you're actively training the AI to prioritize your account.
It's so efficient. You stretch one topic across multiple days, and then following that, they deploy a 30 to 45-second behind-the-scenes reel teaching a micro lesson.
Wait, so they don't just post the audio waveform thing?
No. Just posting an audiogram and begging people to listen doesn't work anymore. The hook for their reel is actually educational. It's something like right for the ear short sentences, clear structure.
Oh, wow. So they're transferring a tangible skill right there in the feed.
Exactly. Value-first marketing. You provide an immediate payoff for the scroller's attention.
That makes so much sense, because if they learn something useful from a 30-second clip, they just naturally assume the full podcast is going to be packed with value.
You're creating a digital breadcrumb trail, guiding them off the infinite scroll and into your deeper content.
Okay, so they have the carousel, the behind-the-scenes reel. What else is in their starter kit?
They do a 5-step infographic defining the basics of production audience, message, structure, recording, promotion. And then they use this remarkably low-tech tool, a simple story Q&A box on Instagram.
Just the standard ask me a question sticker.
Yeah, it just says ask a producer.
And the VIBE team answers really practical questions about equipment and formats, always pointing back to the Meta podcast.
That is brilliant because it removes all friction. The user doesn't have to open a new app or listen to audio. They just type into a box they're already staring at.
Right. It lowers the barrier to entry entirely. And VIBE has this specific social hook they use that perfectly captures this youth-friendly approach. They say, if you can send a voice note, you can start a podcast. Oh, that's so good. If you can send a voice note, you can start a podcast. Because if you tell a bunch of high schoolers that you're going to teach them, like broadcast journalism and audio engineering,
their eyes will just glaze over immediately.
Yeah. The technical mountain looks way too high. But everyone sends voice notes.
Exactly. It completely demystifies the medium. The intimidation factor just drops to 0.
It reframes the whole thing from a highly technical profession to just a natural extension of normal conversation. But slicing the cake and lowering the barrier online only gets you so far.
Right. Eventually, you need actual people to show up.
Yeah. Converting a passive scroller into an active community member requires them to see themselves in the content. Which brings us to phase 3, moving from digital marketing to genuine community involvement.
And VIBE does this by issuing a formal call for youth voices, using those same Instagram stories and Google Forms. They actively ask young people to propose topics, suggest questions, or even join as guests.
They literally hand over the editorial agenda to the audience.
They do. And if you're listening to this, getting your audience to physically participate might sound, I don't know, exhausting or expensive.
Yeah, a lot of work. But Vibe's brilliance is how they bridge the gap between online and offline. They take the audio offline by organizing local, in-person listening sessions.
Right. Hesse in Romania is a great example of this.
Yeah, they gather people in a room, play the podcast, and just discuss the local issues it brings up. It's literally like throwing a party and inviting people step by step. First, you invite them to listen, then you invite them to talk.
And the logistics of that party are so smart. Hesse doesn't rent expensive event spaces. They use stakeholder briefing emails to local schools and municipalities.
Just asking for a safe room.
Exactly. The pitch is just, we have this EU-funded educational resource. Can you provide a room for a listening session and invite your students?
So you throw the party, but you asked a local school to provide the living room.
Yes. It's mutually beneficial. The school gets a free media literacy initiative, and the podcast gets a guaranteed captive audience.
And it gives stakeholders a sense of ownership, too. Now, once they actually get the community gathered in that room, VYE does something that drives crazy organic growth.
The Youth Challenge.
Yes, the Youth Challenge. 60 seconds, one message. They ask young people to record and send in a 60-second voice note sharing their perspective on a local topic.
And then the production team uses those raw voice notes in future episodes.
It's the ultimate form of user-generated content. You are building a snowball that gets bigger as people share it.
Think about the psychology there. If a young person's voice note is featured in a professional podcast, their immediate reaction is pure pride.
Oh, 100%. They're going to
Yeah.
text the link to their parents, their friends, everyone, like, go to minute 12, that's me.
Then the snowball just rolls down the hill. You gather new listeners through trusted personal recommendations instead of, fighting the algorithm.
Because a recommendation from a friend carries infinitely more weight than a sponsored ad. But wait, here's where it gets really interesting, and I have to ask, if we are talking about teenagers, there is a massive elephant in the room.
The cringe factor.
Yes. Most 16-year-olds are absolutely terrified of hearing their own recorded voice. If you host a party and ask for voice notes, how do you stop the shy kids from just hiding in the back while the extroverts take over?
It's a huge barrier.
Mm-hmm.
But the Vibe EP playbook anticipates that exact performance anxiety. They tell participants up front, you do not need a perfect story, just a real one.
But what if even hitting the record button is just too paralyzing?
They have a micro-step for that. They bypass the anxiety entirely by telling the participant, don't worry about recording, just sit down and write 3 sentences. Just 3. Now read them out loud in your room.
Wow, just write 3 sentences and say them out loud.
Yeah, and boom, that is already a script draft.
That is so liberating. It removes the pressure of performing like a broadcaster. You aren't asking them to be a journalist just to read a sticky note.
And anyone can read 3 sentences out loud. It really proves that the core mission is genuine inclusion, not just, finding the most polished kids to act as mouthpieces.
Right, because focusing on inclusion over polish is what actually sustains a project. Which leads us to our final point. One of the biggest threats to any new podcast is pod fade.
Oh, pod fade is so real.
It is. It's when creators release, 3 episodes, get totally overwhelmed by editing and promoting, and just abandon the project entirely.
So how does VIE avoid pod fade? They shift the focus from perfection to consistency.
But how? Because promising a highly produced episode every single week is impossible for a grassroots group.
They use production diary updates. Instead of going completely silent between big releases, they post simple photos and short texts about what they were learning.
Oh, like behind-the-scenes reality checks.
Exactly. They keep the momentum up towards their May 2026 horizon without overclaiming. They just share the messy work-in-progress reality, like, here's what we're struggling with today.
I feel like modern audiences actually crave that authenticity. We see so much hyper-polished corporate content that, honestly, a photo of a messy desk and tangled headphones is refreshing.
It invites the audience into the journey. And crucially, this transparency extends to their gear. The Vibe materials state explicitly, a phone can be enough.
A phone is enough. A clear message matters more than the equipment.
Always.
We get so bogged down in the gear trap, people think they need a $400 microphone and a mixing board before they're even allowed to hit record. But if your message is boring, a $1,000 mic just gives people a crystal clear recording of a boring message.
And that gear trap is especially damaging in youth work. When adults obsess over broadcast quality, they inadvertently filter out the raw, authentic voices just because they don't sound professional.
There's a quote from the source material that hits this perfectly. Youth voices grow faster when adults create space, not control.
Create space, not control.
Yeah. When adults demand studio-quality audio, participation is limited to the kids who have the resources or quiet rooms at home. But when you just create the space, give them a safe room, lend them a smartphone, ask a good question, the friction is gone.
The youth voices just naturally fill that space.
Exactly. So let's distill all of this down for the listener. If you want to build an audience from zero, here are the 3 non-negotiable practical tips we've extracted today.
Number 1, announce before you launch. You have to plant the seeds.
Right. Do not launch to an empty room. Use teasers for the algorithm and static updates for local stakeholders. Strategy beats noise.
Number 2, turn one episode into many short clips. Slice that cake.
Use carousels, reels, infographics, lower the barrier to entry. If they can send a voice note, they can start a podcast.
And number 3, involve your community from day one. Move the digital experience into the physical world.
Throw the party with local listening sessions and build that snowball with the 60-second voice note challenge. You don't need a perfect story, just a real one.
Which brings us to the call to action. The Vibe Bee project is all about taking tangible steps, and we want you to do the same. Do not just listen to this deep dive and keep scrolling.
Try executing just one of these steps today. Draft that 3-sentence teaser. Make a 7-slide carousel. Send an email to a community center asking to host a listening group. Make it real.
Make it real. And as you start drafting those ideas, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over.
We've spent this entire conversation analyzing how to project your voice outwards, how to build an audience from zero. But if a podcast's true power lies in community inclusion, what happens to your local culture when the listeners realize that they have the power to become the broadcasters?
It completely flips traditional media on its head. You aren't just opening the doors to a party and hoping people listen to you speak.
No, you are handing them the microphone the second they walk into the room.
And that is exactly how you turn an empty room into a movement.